I want to congratulate you and We the World on the 20th anniversary of 11 days of global unity. Together, you, me, and we can create a better world and have fun doing it.
Thank you, Dr. Jane Goodell, for helping We the World and all our partners to celebrate over 20 years of 11 Days of Global Unity. And thank you for joining us. Welcome to the 11 Days of Global Unity. My name is Birgit Ben Eli, and I'm the Director of Strategic Engagement and International Outreach for We the World. Today, I'm excited that we will be joined by our special guest, Nina Reich, who will be talking about peace, the 11th theme of the 11 Days of Global Unity. For the full 11-day schedule, you can register for free by going to 11daysofglobalunity.org. That's the numeral 11. There you will find access to all the 11 days broadcasts. You can also visit we.net to take action with the 11 campaigns for change, subscribe to Trans Magazine, and you can support this global work by contributing at we.net/donate. A heartfelt thank you to all of you who make this possible. Before we bring on our speaker, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge some of our incredible partners who we support and collaborate with during the 11 Days of Global Unity and throughout the year. The UN International Day of Peace NGO Committee, Peace Day Philly, the Unite for Peace Coalition, including the Unity Earth, the Sign Network, One World, and Hubcast Media, the Awakening World, We the World, May Peace Prevail on Earth International, United Religions Initiative, Pathways to Peace, Global Silent Minute, Children of the Earth, Climate Week, the Deep and Rapid Transformation Convergence, Good News Broadcast, and Times Square and Pace Bene Nonviolence Campaign. Together, these groups represent millions of people working to achieve global unity and peace. This movement is a living example of what becomes possible when we act from interdependence, compassion, and shared purpose, all working with We the World and the We campaign at we.net. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Let's now bring in our guest, Nina Streich. It is my great honor to introduce a remarkable leader whose life's work demonstrates the power of film to advance peace, justice, and unity. Nina is the founder and executive director of the Global Peace Film Festival, which she launched in 2003 in response to the Iraq War. For more than 20 years, the festival has been a home for stories that do not just recount conflict, but illuminate pathways towards dignity, coexistence, and hope. A lifelong peace activist and media professional, Nina has dedicated her career to showing how stories can inspire social change. From her early work producing the historic 1982 disarmament rally film, In Our Hands, which captured the voices of over 1 million people calling for peace in New York City, to her leadership today. Nina has consistently championed film as a transformative medium for justice, resilience, and global unity. So today, welcome Nina. Today we are going to explore how film serves as a catalyst for peace and social change. Stories hold the power to awaken culture, shift perception, help us imagine new ways of living. And Nina will tell us more about this. It is such a joy and privilege to be here in conversation with you today. So can you take us back, to the moment or experience that first showed you the power of film and as a tool for peace and transformation, just from the early beginnings?
Well, I grew up in England, and some of my parents' best friends were had been blacklisted in the United States, and they were expats living in England. And one of them in particular, who I was really impressed by, his name is Millard Lampell, and he was the one who told me stories change the world, and stories on film change a lot of people together. And so when you watch a film together, it's a powerful tool for change. And so that was when I was about 12 years old, and I always wanted to be in the film business, and I wanted to make the film that changed the one film that changed the entire world. That was, you know, my preteen and early teenage goal in life. And so I found my way into the film business. I started as an editor, and I worked I cut trailers for both major studio and independent feature films. But at the same time, I had also started around the same time that I decided I wanted to make the film that changed the world. I used to go to demonstrations in London when I was little. The first ones I would go to, and you know, when I was like 12, 13, were like Save the Whales and things like that. But I started going to the anti-Vietnam War demonstrations.
Mm-hmm.
And funny thing, I was young then, and I remember marching around Grosvenor Square where the US Embassy is in London, and that was, that was what you did. And I remember the bushes around Grosvenor Square being like this high. When I went back many, many years later, when I, was fully grown, they were down here, and I was like, they cut the bushes, and it's like, no, they didn't. It was you grew. So
That's adorable. How perspective changes, right?
yes, exactly. Exactly. So anyway, I got into it. I always went to demonstrations, and I started doing the PR for demonstrations. And when I moved to the United States, around just before the first UN special session on
Mm,
disarmament, I volunteered as the media to do the media coordination from that. And so, as you mentioned, the film In Our Hands, when the UN second special session on disarmament happened,
mm-hmm.
I actually applied for the job as media coordinator, and became the media coordinator for that effort, which was just an extraordinary event. Um, and because I was because I was so interested in film and was actually working in film. I was an assistant film editor at that time. I was particularly concerned about making sure that all the independent filmmakers who were shooting on 16 millimeter at the time
Mm-hmm.
had access to the footage that they need to make the films. And what ended up happening is we had a group. I found one filmmaker who was doing a film on disarmament, needed footage from the rally, and I said, well, we should collaborate. And I can only give access to the speaker, the media platform, to a limited number of filmmakers. So what I suggested was that anybody who needed footage could go to this producer,
Mm,
director, and and if they donated their footage to the film, then they could, in exchange, get the footage that they needed for their films. And this turned into this documentary In Our Hands, which is available online, and had the participation of 43 cinematographers, um,
wow,
hundreds of volunteers. We
that's impressive.
expected maybe 16 cinematographers to
Mm-hmm.
participate, and they just came out of the woodwork. And
That's incredible.
yeah, it was amazing. And in fact, somebody heard about it who wasn't even part of the group and just mailed their footage in, from Northampton, Massachusetts. And beautiful segment of that's in the film of the group, the bus that was hired from Northampton and drove down, the long way to New York City from, very early in the morning. And it is a very important segment of the beginning of the film.
Yeah, the story is just incredible how you created that. And what I like to, what I also, I mean, it's amazing that you started so early as an activist, as you just said, age 12. That's incredible. And what I like that you're both an activist and a filmmaker, that you know how to combine this, and that you also show that not only that activism, art, they are separate domains. They they can intertwine, and that there are two sides of a coin, if you want to call it like that. That you can create social change with that, with art, with activism art.
Absolutely.
That's really fantastic. So maybe you just kind of bring us. Did this lead to the founding of the Global Peace Festival?
Before we move on, I just want to give
absolutely.
give some credit to I was just behind the scenes. I wasn't involved with the creative side of In Our Hands. And I want to give a shout out to Stan Warno, who was the co-director and editor, and the whole team behind it. It was a huge team. And I saw the film as it went on, but producers are not in front, don't make the creative decisions in the room. So
that's true.
Just want to give it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. But so I'm just thinking, I mean, that's a big jump already. But so the film was from 1982. You found it in 2003.
Yeah, we finished the film in 1983, and we
in
had
1983. Okay.
We had the first screening on June 12th, 1983, exactly a year after the rally itself.
So in these, before, and that's just a curiosity now, before we jump to the founding of the Global Peace Film Festival, in these 20 years, you want to give us a brief synopsis of your journey?
Well, I film and politics have been my two loves, and I was a film editor. I would be between 1982 and 19 actually not long after that, I really started focusing on the film work as a documentary person. And I did a lot of different jobs, and I got into politics. I ended up being invited to asked to be involved with the Dukakis presidential campaign, and that led me to another campaign, which was the David Dinkins mayoral campaign in 1989. And I volunteered on the Dinkins campaign, but my agreement in terms of volunteering on that was that if Dinkins was elected mayor, that I would be one of the coordinators of his inauguration, because I got into doing events and love doing events. And most of the events that I did were for disarmament groups or women's events, women's issues. They were all like, all the different issues that are covered in the 11 Days of Global Unity, actually.
That's a good reference. But I was just thinking, even you just touched upon a few points. It shows already a clear evolution from 1983. Not only that, from the age of 12 until the foundation of the Global Peace Film Festival. That was born or founded in 2003 during the Iraq War. Can you just maybe you can just
so let me just give a little background. I became the New York City deputy film commissioner and then acting film commissioner. And after the Dinkins administration, I sort of fell into film festivals. I was asked to be a development director for one, and then another. And so my focus became, managing and producing film festivals. And as a film festival person, you are sourcing films. You're not actually making films. And when the Iraq War started, and I was always an activist. I was on the board of Manhattan Neighborhood Network from like 1996, I think it was, something like, or 8, something like that. And in 2001, when the towers fell, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, we decided to that we could. Actually, it wasn't 2001. It was when the Iraq War was starting. We could use our facility to help uplink live feeds to free speech TV, to broadcast out on direct broadcast television in the United States, but also to other countries, to let people know that people in America were actually protesting the war at home. Because obviously, media here was not really covering the anti-war movement.
Yeah.
And somebody I met through that said to me, "Hey, this guy I know wants to have a peace film festival." And I said I thought he was crazy, but if anybody could do it, would be you. So I went and interviewed, and I was actually hired to create it. This
Incredible.
New York-based businessman who's a devout Muslim and a conservative Republican, complete opposite of me, who's Jewish and progressive and a Democrat. He hired me to create this festival, and I really had a vision from the very beginning. The minute he hired me, I mean, first of all, our politics were completely diametrically opposite. I had to, and that was the beginning of how do you structure something like this. And I also in the 80s was very active in the anti-intervention in Central America movement. And one of the leaders of that, Charlie Clements, um, uh, he told me one day when he changed jobs, he was doing anti-war work, and then all of a sudden he disappeared, moved to Boston, and started doing something else. And when I met with him in Boston, I said, "What happened?" And he said, from the time I got back from from the time I started as an activist, I defined myself by what I was against, and I decided it was time that I defined myself by what I was for. And that was such an inspiration to me that my whole focus in terms of programming the Global Peace Film Festival was not to be a festival really reacting to the war, but a festival that could have a vision of what does peace, how do we make peace? How do we look for models of peace? How do we use film as the vehicle that changes the world? Coming
I agree.
to your old self.
No, I agree. It gives in. I must say that the approach resonates with me, and I hope it resonates with many, because it's easy, not easy. It's easy is the wrong word, but to dwell on something negative is not transforming the future. So I love how you approach this, to focus on what we can do in order to build something better. So that absolutely resonates with me, and it fuels not only hope, it also fuels action. So
yeah. I had this vision at the very beginning of, like a garden, and, an empty garden with soil, and you throw some seeds on it and you water the seeds, especially wildflowers or something. You throw the seeds on it, you water them, you take care of them, and you don't know which ones are going to grow and flourish and which ones aren't, but you have to take care of the whole garden. So
you know what I mean? Yeah.
I
No, I
always
agree. That's
the
a perfect.
festival
No.
in that way.
Yeah. I was just like, no, I love that approach, and again, it resonates with me. I absolutely agree with your perspective on approaching this. I just thought about, you founded the Global Peace Film Festival in Florida, and it just occurred to me, why Florida?
Yes.
Sorry.
Well, the founder, his business was based in the Bronx and Riverdale, actually. He had business interests in Orlando, so he said the festival has to be in Orlando. The funny thing, when he hired me, I didn't even know the area code there. And I was like, he hired me.
But you knew where Orlando was.
I'd actually been to Orlando. I'd been to the thing.
Joking.
I thought I'd been to Orlando. I hadn't actually been to
Mm,
Orlando because I'd taken my nephews on a trip to the theme parks, and
yeah.
we stayed in what in this little town called Kissimmee, and
Hmm.
one day we went to Universal, and that actually is in Orlando.
Yeah.
And one day we went to Disney, and then I took them to they were like 8 and 11 at the time,
Mm.
and I really wanted to go take them to the Space Center the Kennedy Space Center.
Mm.
And this was before they're grown now. This was before they had rides at the Kennedy Space Center. So it was really about the rockets and about
Mm.
you know, they had them in a big hangar and everything. And the boys just couldn't care less about that. All they wanted was, they knew what rides at Disney they wanted to go on. They knew what rides at Universal they wanted to go on.
I'm pretty sure they were happy that you were founding the Global Peace Film Festival in Orlando. But let's try to get back,
Yes. Oh, okay. So
No, 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 I'm sorry. I don't want to, I have no intention to interrupt you, but, and I would love to hear more. And I know we can go on forever and ever.
yes.
But I still like to go talk a little bit more
Yes.
so about the Global Film Festival. And again, you described your outlook to focus on peace and how it can change to something better and build rather than dwell in what anyhow we all know is bad but we can't change. I mean, there's no none of us gains anything being stuck in the status quo, right? And just talk about how terrible something is. We have to find solutions of how to change that. So I do love that. So I'm just curious, if you describe the Global Peace Film Festival, can you describe a little bit like what kind of organizations approached you to be part of this, especially with the focus you had? And I also like to get into the I hope we can get a little bit into this, that you said that every film is even if it doesn't appear political, there's still always a culture and message behind this. And
Yeah.
I would appreciate if you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, just to get into that first, you know, conventional wisdom is that films shouldn't be political, but
Yeah.
basically everything that we ingest has a politic behind it. So it can either be considered overtly political if it has a progressive message, or
Mm-hmm.
or the current action movies and everything, people say they're not political, but
That's not true.
actually very political. They're just right wing. They're telling people to trust, not to.
Yeah, who's the bad and who's the good, and creating
Yeah,
stereotypes. I
yeah.
agree.
And the American film business has really grown up on the the individualism of the American hero. And
Mm-hmm.
that is not necessarily a positive message.
Yeah.
And that comes back to the blacklist, actually, where
Hmm.
the blacklisted writers who had to have fronts when in order to get their work seen. There
Mm.
was the TV series Robin Hood that was on television, was produced in England by an amazing television producer who hired blacklisted writers, because the message was stealing from the rich and giving stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. So Millard, who I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
he was one of those writers who wrote for that series, not with his own name, but with a friend who got the job for him, and he paid,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit came from him, but he was, and that was how the progressive writers back then were injecting messages, positive messages into their media. You know, Star Wars, for instance, you can look at Star Wars in many different ways, whatever political lens you put on it, but it is a very political film and a very political series.
Do you want to give examples? What are you thinking about now?
Well, the first Star Wars I saw, I liked, I loved, and I saw it as the David versus Goliath, basically, and the you know uh, the little guy against the empire.
That's true, but you know what? Since we speak about messages, so if I think about it, I agree. You're right. David versus Goliath, but then you have, you know, the bad person is the big black cloaked versus the small white dressed. So that already creates a message again, you know, and then even
yes, and there are very negative messages as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, there have been many, I think there have even been PhD dissertations
probably
written about.
But you see that many of these things, I mean, despite that, as you just described, the one Robin Hood, you know, where you put in positive messages, I think I would hope, not always, I can imagine, or I assume that you know, unless someone has a political agenda that is subconscious, because that's because we all grew up in a certain culture and we carry a certain baggage with us. So I would hope that this partly is not intentional, but that's why it's so important to talk about this too, and that's why it's even more important to do what you are doing with these film festivals.
And also, you know, one thing that we lack very much in this country, and probably in, well, this country more than most, is media literacy and the instruction of how important it is to dissect these messages and to understand what we're being fed.
But we see this nowadays as well. But I agree with you. I mean, again, I grew up in Germany, and we grew up on analyzing critically every single piece, you know, and it's very, and I think it's important. So I think it's not only understanding media in that sense, that applies to all spheres of.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Finland, in Finland, kindergarten children are taught media literacy and how to understand what they're seeing, which is so important.
I agree with you.
So anyway, getting back to the festival.
Yeah, thank you.
Over time, the first festival was in December 2003. And unfortunately, the founder who had committed the funding for the first festival went out of business. I mean, literally a month before the festival. But he committed to, you know, what he had committed to me. So I was able to do it. But in January 2004, when I came back to Florida, I was like, I have virtually no money to do this, but it's 2004. The general election is going to happen later in November. And I'm doing something for peace in Florida, which is going to be so critical in the 2004 election. Somehow I've got to make this happen. And it was it was the people I met along the way who were hungry for something like this, because there was nothing like it in Central Florida anyway, that encouraged me to keep going. And it's taken a long time to really develop, but in 2006, I changed the dates from the December, holiday time in December to anchor around the International Day of Peace on September 21st. And that enabled me to develop relationships with colleges and high schools.
Mm-hmm.
And because there really is an there's the educational aspect of the films that we show, but more importantly, young people are our future, and they are the ones who have to really be inspired to get involved and to be the leaders of the future, and to take action about what they see as that's wrong in the world. Climate change, climate change activists, women's rights activists, human rights activists. I mean, in fact, all the items in the 11 days of global unity.
Yeah.
And so I'd always seen the programming as intentionally very broad. Peace, how do you define peace?
Yeah.
It's starts within each and every one of us. You know, you have to look at peace in your own family. Because you have disagreements. How do you navigate those things? Peace in your local community, in your country, and in the world. It's reflected in all of those things. And so one of the things that I'm always happy about is when people say to me, I didn't expect to see a film about that in the Global Peace Film Festival. What does that have to do with peace? Well, everything has to do with peace.
It's broad. I agree with you. It's a very, very broad, and you're right. The 11 themes are just one example of how everything is interconnected. And
Yeah. I mean, peace.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So peace encompasses every one of those 11 items. And we have films that touch on every one of them, and not necessarily every year, every one of them, but so the way I started really building community, because for years I had the tiniest budget, and it was mostly volunteer. I still, I'm able to pay myself, but not a living wage. I have to do other stuff to keep a roof over my head. Was through community-based organizations and finding films that touch on issues that our local groups are doing. And going back to my image of the garden, of the empty plot of soil that you throw seeds on, you never know which one is going to grow. And so we've had some really surprising and unusual collaborations with organizations that, I'd never heard of before sometimes. And we've had the obvious collaborations with organizations like Amnesty International and Campus Peace Action and things like that. But last year we had a film called Invisible Nation about Taiwan, and the Taiwan America Association of Greater Orlando got really involved and came out in droves for the film, and that was just wonderful to see.
I agree. That's amazing.
So we encourage, we want the organizations to bring their materials. So if they're doing a petition, we want them to pass it around. We want people to sign it. We have a survey that asks questions, not only the demographic questions that we need for grant purposes, but also impact questions like, did the film change your opinion? Did it make you want to do something? What did it make you want to do? So that we can track that our programming is effective on a film by film basis.
And that's important. I agree, because you want, as you just said, I mean, you have some intention with having this film festival, and right, it's not about showing and having hope. It's also creating change, and that requires a dialogue. I absolutely agree with you.
So we also say about the festival, most film festivals, the excitement is when the lights go down and people are waiting to see the film. But for us, it's even more so when the lights come back up. and people
Yeah.
are sitting a little taller in their seats and thinking, oh gosh, what can I do?
No, I agree.
Hard
That brings me actually to I was just thinking over these years, it's like 2 decades now, more than 2 decades. Did you see a change in audience? Because you said we spoke about or mentioned how important the youth is and getting the youth involved. Is there a change? And something else I'd like to know as well is there a specific film or an example that on a personal level that moved you deeply or shifted something in your perspective or in the conversation on peace?
Uh, I mean, in terms of a film that affected me, there's,
I'm sure there are plenty. I mean,
many.
but I thought maybe you can think about just something that pops into
Uh,
your mind.
well, I'd rather come up with, how it's impacted audiences
Absolutely. Okay, go,
and
please.
things that it's inspired audiences to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we used to have the teacher um, moved on, so we no longer have the same relationship with this particular high school. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm going to go to another example. Again, the professor retired, but there's a town outside, just north of, I think it's north. I'm not good with
Mm-hmm.
geography. It's like just outside of Orlando, called Apopka, and
Mm-hmm.
Lake Apopka, it became, this is probably 2 decades ago, uh, an EPA, what's it called, site, pollution. They had to clean up the pollution
Yeah.
because it was killing the birds and the animals. But what was killing them was the runoff from farms, from pesticide,
Mm-hmm.
from farm work, from the pesticides in the farms, and that ran off into the lake. And of course, the EPA cared about the wildlife, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't care about the farm workers, so who were
Mm-hmm.
dying, being killed by the pesticides you know that they had to live in.
Yeah.
And so there was a short film that we had, and this is, in the backyard of Orlando, about called Out of the Muck, which was about a farm worker and her story. And this environmental sciences class at Rollins College, the professor, brought his students to the film, and they decided that they were going to do a project to basically support the farm workers.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like a 2 or 3 year project that ended up with some Florida legislature passing legislation
Mm-hmm.
to protect the farm workers. And so
That's
that was
fantastic.
that was basically the result of having shown this film. And
That's an amazing outcome.
that and it carries forward because there's an organization that we now partner with called Ideas for Us, which is a wonderful
Mm-hmm.
environmental organization. And
Mm-hmm.
the CEO of that organization, I met with him last year, and I didn't know that he was a Rollins graduate. And he said to me, I was at Rollins in, these years, and we did this project at Lake Apopka, which was part of the inspiration for what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
not only was it the project, but the projection forward
yeah,
to his
exactly.
career, and I'm so proud of that. You know,
Yeah, I can
those
imagine.
those are the things that give me hope, and those are the things that I'm so most proud about in terms of what the festival has achieved.
You see, and I was even just thinking about it, and you brought a beautiful example, what gives hope for the future and for peace building. So that's a fantastic example. And so just, we have to come at some point to our end, even though I can continue here, and I love to listen to
Yes,
you.
we should.
Um, we mentioned the younger generation. So, and I'm sure you have young filmmakers, but what role do you see in filmmakers and storytellers, in shaping the culture of peace in the future? I mean, I'm pretty sure that you have a lot of young
Oh, yes.
filmmakers participating, and maybe you can just tell us a bit about the voices of how they see this and how you see that, or what you hear.
Well, I just want to say I want to, I encourage people, young and old, to tell their stories. I mean, not just young people. Young people will, are our future, but we need the stories of people, baby boomers, giving telling their stories about what happened, what they did during the anti-war movement. There are we can learn from that. Young people need to, tell their stories of it's just really important for people to tell their stories.
I agree. I was just thinking it's not just one generation, because we
Absolutely.
always it's not in it's not, I mean, yes, the young people it's their future. However, I think it's important to bring in
And another thing,
whatever generation we can
yeah,
still have, to bring in their wisdom, their knowledge, their experience
I
to.
was I was just going to say, intergenerational storytelling
Yeah,
is really critical.
I agree. I fully agree with that. So unfortunately, we have to come somehow to an
Mhm.
end, and so I love the concept that this is a language of hope, and that is film is a bridge to build peace. And what we do is we call to action. So we're promoting the hashtag urgency for action. It's urgency, the number 4, and then action, like hashtag urgency for action. And I'd like to invite you now for our audience to, if you have a call to action um, for our audience here.
Well,
What
I
would you ask them, or what would you ask the audience, or what is your, anything you can think of, what you think is very important now to as a call to action?
oh I everything that you do, actually, everything that you do is important, and what you don't do is also equally as important. So, both in the positive and the negative sense. And so being mindful about the impact that we all have in the world, and make that a positive impact. And, make sure that you spend time in, whether it's in your day or whether it's in your week or whether it's less frequently than that, doing something toward change. This morning, I'm not a gardener at all. I say I have a black thumb. I kill plants. But there's a local
Sounds
garden.
familiar.
There's a local garden near me, and or not, it's a park, a teeny tiny little park
Mm.
called Verdi Park. And every Saturday morning, except during the winter, um, volunteers garden there, and I go garden there for a couple of hours. Actually, this morning I only went for 1 hour because of this. And more often than not, rather than gardening, because all I can do is like rake and pick up trash and things like that. I,
That's
I
important.
I do the table, and I can water plants. I do the tabling, and, get people to sign up for the newsletter and things like that. So, and it makes me happy. Just A, you're spending time outside, and B, it's such a positive thing. It has really what these volunteers have done has really transformed this
Mm.
park. But I'd also like to say, the Global Peace Film Festival, the week after our in-person festival that ends on the International Day of Peace,
Mhm.
from the 22nd to the 28th, we have a free-for-all shorts program that runs online, Peace
Do
Film,
you have a link?
peacefilmfest.org, and there will be 32 films that will be available during that week to watch. They're films from different places around the world, Most of them are advocacy films because that's what we look for. And while it's not the kind of call to action we can do in person, many of the films are inspiring and hopefully will inspire some of the audience to A, watch them and watch more, and B, do something about what they see.
Thank you, Nina. I was already thinking just the work per se that you do is a call to action, right? I mean, that's what you uplift films and voices to build, peace, justice, and unity. So that's very important. And since you mentioned it's important what we do and what we don't do is equally important, I can only invite all of us here to become, a co-creators of a vision of what we'd like to see, to amplify voices of hope and create a culture of peace for all of us. So Nina, thank you so much for reminding us that film always has a moral dimension, which I think is very important to know. And that there's a lens through which we can not only witness how the world works, but we can also imagine and build a better one. And I think that's, again, I really, really love that approach and emphasis. So before we end here, I'd like to, I want to mention the We Power campaign. It's about the power of we. Millions of us coming together to transform our society. So it prioritizes becoming good. And to help us launch the We Power campaign, please go to we.net/We Power campaign. So Nina, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
It was such a pleasure to having you here. And we look forward to future conversations, hopefully.